You're listening to Funny Peculiar with Jeff Downs.
Welcome to another special edition of the Funny Peculiar podcast. And this week, and I'm always on the lookout for guests and different guests. And I look at circus, I look at burlesque, at drag, I look at all different varieties. But this week, and this is a first, and this is a new one, I hope to do more, is the lookalike industry and body doubles. And so my very special guest this week is the guy who was Ralph Fiennes' body double in the Harry Potter films. So a particular honour, and a very old friend that I've known from the comedy circuit from London years ago. It's Lord Voldemort himself, and he's here. It's Ian Longstaff. Hello, Ian.
Hello.
I'm very good. So there we go. So it's now we've known each other for years now.
Yes, we have.
So I'll just
20 years.
20 years. So now we'll talk about your poetry later and the comedy poetry from when we met in London, sort of about 99, 2000, something like that. And we've got a story about Russell Brand as well.
We do.
Because what happened that night, very quickly, we won't go into it, but we were in an open mic night and in walked this hairy guy with a beard who was just crazy.
He was crazy. I can't even remember what material he did, but I do remember him swinging the microphone around like a rock star and catching himself on the eyebrow and bleeding profusely.
He was, and it was the Purple Turtle, wasn't it?
It was in Islington.
In Islington, London Road.
And then he had to exit the building rather quickly,
He
didn't
just ran, didn't he?
He did.
So, Russell, let's try and get Russell on the show and talk to him about that.
Well, I'm sure it still,
We will
haunts him.
It haunts him. Anyway, but that's why I met you as well.
It is. In fact, I think it was 98. I think it was February 98.
Yeah, I think it was. And then, and you're a brilliant comedy poet, and there's not many on the circuit at all.
Still isn't.
It's so. But anyway, but actually, what you're known for, and another big part of your work is your Ralph Fiennes' body double in the Harry Potter films, and you've just come from the Broughton Hall Children's Literature Festival in Yorkshire.
I have.
That was yesterday, and how was that?
Well, that was great. So I now have a career, a spin-off career as a Voldemort Lookalike.
Brilliant.
So I call myself Voldy.
You're Voldy.
And obviously my job is to scare the children. But some of them are quite small, so you can't really do the full scary. So you kind of have to play it. I do a kind of, it's his day off, and he's not quite so evil, and he's recruiting for the Dark Army, and would you like to join, or would you just like a selfie?
You can say, now, where can people think in the logic? Now, you know other Harry Potter lookalikes,
Harry
Potter.
Yeah, no, he's a good mate. So
hopefully I can get him on the show.
Yeah, he's the number one Harry Potter lookalike.
Wow, okay.
So, and we do Harry and Voldy.
Brilliant. As a double act. Together again, sort of like
indeed. Well, he's part of me, isn't he?
Part of you, yeah.
It all makes sense.
And then Bellatrix as well.
Well, Bellatrix body double. Yeah, she's. I'm still in touch with her. She lives in Manchester. There's every double you can. There's Ron and Hermione. The trio go out. In fact, we're doing a gig in Manchester.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, Halloween thing.
Oh, brilliant.
Where all four of us are going out.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, there's
a massive industry.
Well, I don't know how massive it is, but there's just like you get these inquiries. We've got the last two inquiries we had before Manchester were Texas and Berlin.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yes, you.
So basically, people are prepared to pay you to turn up. I mean, it's easy for Harry. All he does is chuck a scarf on and he's on.
But it's different for you. So hopefully by the end of, or when this episode goes out, and I'll before I will talk about where you can find photos or whatever. I'll give you some photos. I'll give you some social media platforms they can go on. But you've got to have makeup.
I have the full prosthetic.
So Harry and Hermione, all those, they just turn up and throw clothes on. But how long does it take for you to get your
part-timers?
They are.
Well, it's about a 3-hour makeup.
3 hours?
Yeah. So from arriving at the gig, it's actually 4 hours.
And you've got to shave your head and everything.
I shaved my head first, as I did on the film, saving them a job. And yeah, then it's the prosthetic. Now, obviously, in the film, it was CGI, so there isn't a prosthetic for it. So I've had one made that fits my face.
So really, they CGI'd all that on Ralph Fiennes' face. He didn't have to wear anything. They just
all he wore. You wear these like little coloured dots, which are tracking markers, and that's how they work out what the nose slits should be doing in each kind of every way he twists and turns. But obviously, then in real life, I've got to kind of make my nose really flat for the lookalike gig. So that's a prosthetic. So yeah, it's it's
So
the
there's a
full-
long
it's the full-
time, and then go and perform, do your
Then
stuff.
I've got to go and perform.
And then you have to take it all off again.
Yeah. So and I'm jumping around all over the place.
I know some of the
Yeah.
shots because I've sent someone yesterday.
Well, I do flying.
Well,
Jeff.
someone
It's
said to
like-
me, "Is he flying?" And I said,
Yeah,
"No, he can just
damn
jump
right he is."
very high." But yeah, so you have magical powers, obviously.
Well, obviously.
So you're at this children's literary festival
Yeah.
yesterday, and I believe Claire Balding was in attendance.
Yeah,
as
well, it was kind of so. Basically, there's loads and loads of marquees full of authors and poets, and
Right.
everyone's doing little speeches and signings and stuff. And I had like just the right to roam, basically. So I didn't gate crash anybody's gig. Well, I did actually. There was another guy who calls himself the Dark Lord.
Oh really?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
so there was a Lord off
Jamie
between,
Thompson. There was a Lord off. Yeah.
between the two Voldemort.
So
What
I- so I-
happened?
well, I kind of
Sparks flew, no?
Well, obviously I marmalised him and then left. He's going in his deep voice. He
Yeah.
goes, there's only one Dark Lord, and I'm going.
Give us- What's
it's
your
like,
Dark Lord?
just because you do the deep voice and have a suitcase full of props, that doesn't make you the most powerful wizard in the world. And then,
But you
know,
are Voldemort
Well, I am.
because you were the body double.
Well,
so
yeah.
you have the power. So it was like Conkers. You immediately. So did he walk away going, "Oh no"?
Well, no, because it was kind of his gig,
Oh,
but
it was his gig.
I just left with some, disparaging comment about, well, if you want to listen to the rest of his sales pitch,
Yeah.
feel free. So in the meantime, I'm just swanning around the festival,
Right.
and I mean the reaction's just amazing because obviously,
What's it like when the kids?
well,
just-
they're just like it's like the Pied Piper effect.
Yeah.
They're all clamouring around. Then you basically, either they're hiding behind the parent,
Right.
or they're coming up for a selfie or a photo, or they want to duel you,
Yeah.
or they're going, "You're not real. That's a mask," or
Right.
whatever. At which point, obviously, you need to, hold back on
so
what
do
you
they
might
want
say
to-
to that child.
So they want to duel with you because
Yeah.
they're so and and this is where they'll have a wand.
No,
and,
no, they didn't. Well, at the Potter gigs, they kind of tend to have ones because they're all dressed up. But yesterday, obviously, they're just kids wandering around a festival. So so I do kind of a one duel school. with
Right.
them.
Okay.
And the first lesson of wand school is you need a wand. So
Right,
you've-
okay.
You've rather failed there, haven't you? So they then have to choose from one of my forfeit wands.
Right.
And they are various comedy ones. I have the Dowel of B&Q
Right. Okay.
with the tape of duck attached to it.
Okay.
There's a piece of garden hose, which, of course, if they know the water spell, could be very effective.
Oh right. Very good.
I have the twisted twig of patheticness and a paint stirring stick.
Right. Okay.
So and yesterday I had a string bean because a friend of mine has an allotment, so they gave me loads of string beans. So,
Okay.
so I also had one of those. So they get to choose a wand.
Okay.
And
and that's
then-
very important because
Of course it is.
Because so Lord Voldemort at his essence is a wizard himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's the wizard,
He's
isn't
not
he?
just like
Come on,
a
Jeff,
bad
get with
man.
the programme.
Well,
No,
I'm
he's a
sorry.
very, very bad man.
He's a very bad
Yes,
man.
I
So
know.
I'm the layman here
And he-
because I've never really watched. I think I've watched the first Harry Potter film.
Oh, right.
I have watched
I was
your
in that
ones.
one. Yeah, yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
so I've seen those. So it's like, but so what's the So go on, carry on. So you then teach them spells,
No, I asked them if they've got a spell.
right?
And they sometimes they go yes, and Expelliarmus or whatever,
Right.
and you go third rule of wand dueling: never tell your opponent
Right.
the spell you are about to cast.
Right. Okay.
So there you go. You failed on all three counts, but never mind. Let's see how we get
Go
on. So they can opt to do a static duel, which obviously is just feet on the floor, but. The flying duel
Yeah.
is that on three we cast our spells and jump in the air at the same time.
Right,
now, if the
okay.
parent is low enough down to the ground taking the photo,
Yeah.
it makes you look like you're flying.
They are incredible photos.
I mean, obviously, I do jump extremely
I know,
high anyway.
You really go for it.
Oh, I do, yeah.
And it's like it's feet off the ground.
Yeah,
it
is.
And again, we'll get the photos available. They're brilliant. They're absolutely...
no, they are stunning.
So tell us about Claire Balding as well. So you didn't get to meet her, but
I
you
didn't
wanted to
know.
do a selfie with her.
Well, I did because I wasn't allowed to gatecrash any of the actual performances or the speeches, what people were doing in the marquees.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to, I really wanted to meet Claire Balding and go, well, of course, only one of us is truly Balding.
Perfect. That would have been gold dust.
Oh, you've written a story about a horse. Oh, lovely. You know.
The
horse who disappeared. I could do that. I could have done that for you.
You could have done that. And I think now the reason I think partly you've got the voice and you've got the whole look because you were the body double. Now,
well, yeah. I mean, I had to study the voice. I had to study every single take he ever did.
And this is going back to... So let's go back to this about 2004.
2004, so Goblet of Fire.
So now, how did you actually... so how did it all come about? How did you become a body double? What was the build-up before you got the call?
Well, it was a bit of a fluke, really. I mean, I was doing background extra work, as you know, at the time.
Yeah.
And
you were in Hippies.
I was in Hippies. I beat up Simon Pegg.
You did. You beat up Simon Pegg. Another hashtag. I'll write that down.
Excellent.
That,
I was driving a comma van, and I got out with a couple of thugs and punched him in the stomach.
You did.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I remember I was in the recording. I saw that because you were. So you were doing a lot of extra work. Carry on. Sorry.
So I'd just moved back up to London, and I was desperate for work, and I was actually going into Harrow to sign on, and I remember thinking, if I could just get 3 weeks' work, I'd be sorted. And like within a minute of that thought, the phone rang, and it was the agent, and they said, "Are you free on Friday?" And I went, "Yeah." What was it for? And they said, "Oh, it's a standing in thing, but they want to audition as well. So if you got it, are you available for the next 3 weeks?" And I went, "Yeah." And they said, "Oh, great. Okay, we'll give you the details." And I said, "What is it?" And they said, "Oh, it's Harry Potter."
Wow.
So on the Friday, I turned up and I was given the script. I was thrust into my hand and say, "Oh, you need to learn that. They want you to know it." And it's like, there's pages and pages of this thing, and it's like, well, by when? And it was like, you basically got to learn it by lunchtime. They could be coming and asking you to do the script, but they only give you it every day because obviously they don't want it taken home and putting on the internet.
Yeah.
So you get your sides every day, which you have to study. So I'm just busy, just like trying to learn all my lines, and then the audition was the creatures department, who were responsible for Voldy. They came and said, "Right, we're going to do the audition now," and they whisked us all off. There was another. That was it. There was another 10 bald guys turned up.
Really? Wow.
And they whisked us off into the creatures department and said, "Look, it's not a standard audition. The silhouette's really important because his robe is really silky when he comes back to human form. And we're just going to take photographs from about 14 different angles. Yeah. And the nearest silhouette will win.
Really?
Win the prize."
Wow.
So I did that. And then I went back onto my standing in. And then about half an hour later, they came and said, "Right, Ian, we want you for the main double. And we want you, I don't know, Bert, to be Ian's stand-in for when he's in makeup."
No.
And it was like literally that.
So
I
you
just
had
got
a
the
stand-in
gig.
as well?
I had a stand-in as well.
I didn't know. Well, now
come on.
I'm going to bow and I've got. Oh right.
Yeah.
So it's that sort of. So you weren't. So you didn't do any lines at that point.
No, absolutely none. There was no.
Just about.
It's just bizarre. There was no acting audition at all.
Wow.
Because it was all about the silhouette. Now, obviously, that's more about the standing in than it is about the doubling. But then what they want you to do is learn the script.
Yeah.
And then what they want you to do with that is to do it, all the doubles do the scene. They run the scene for the director before the actors get anywhere near it.
Oh, really?
So sometimes they say, right, after main unit's finished tonight, there's going to be a get-together. And so basically, I remember one that we were in the Ministry of Magic. It was on Order of the Phoenix. And it was like, it'll be you and the Dumbledore Double, and there'll be the director, the 2 producers. We'll get pizzas, and we'll just run it and like do whatever you think. What do you think he would do? And if we like it, we'll keep it in.
Really?
And it's
so
like...
it's they're blocking out with the doubles
Yeah.
before they've even got the actors in to work out.
Yeah. So basically, each of the heads of department are there, so they're working out what they're going to do with the cameras and the lighting.
And you're literally free-form acting. You're So some of the moves that Ralph Fiennes actually done could have come.
Yeah, I don't think that ever happened, to be honest. I think that. I mean, can you imagine them and say, "Look, look, Rafe, Ian did this, and we'd really like you to keep that in. Could you think you, do you think?
And did you ever? You got to meet Rafe? A few
I did.
times.
Oh yeah, a few times.
And
Not
what was
that
he
many
like?
times.
Was
He was. Now then, how can I say?
yeah.
He was very intense.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
He's just a very. Because there's two of them, isn't there? There's Joseph and there's Rafe.
Yeah.
That's the.
Well, there's Ranulph as well.
Oh, it's Ranulph. Is that the one that? That's the one that walks the Arctic now.
Yeah, that's right.
Who does? He's a very good actor, isn't he?
Yeah, all those polar expedition films he's done.
It's very method. Oh, I see. So that is the sons of.
No, no, it's his
cousin.
nephew.
It's his nephew, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so he was. So what happened when you actually did meet him? Is he just a bit?
Yeah, he's just, I don't know, very intense, and he doesn't really talk to you.
He
But I mean,
doesn't chat.
I kind of knew that, and so I kind of made a point of not really trying, because I thought I'm likely to just kind of say something flippant just for the sake of saying something, and then it'll just. He could throw a paddy, couldn't he?
What was it? Was it in the green room bit while he was getting made up?
Well, we both got made up like in the same trailer,
right?
And then obviously just walking on and off set. Because if I'd been standing in, I'm like in his position, and then he comes to take over.
Right. You don't do that sort of wrestling high five.
No, well, I would have liked that. Over to you. Over to you. And but it's just kind of we didn't have that kind of relationship, let's say. But yeah, obviously I met him, and I met Dan, who was. I was working with Daniel all the time. I spent most of the time dueling him. Really, it was just me and him.
Well, you were saying as well that in some there were scenes where the director was really pushing Daniel. But was pushing you to sort of.
Well, I had to, and this is it. Well, this is when you have to deliver the script. I mean, now you have to deliver the script in the rehearsal, the director's rehearsal, but then you have to do offlines for the cast. So. Like in the scene at Malfoy Manor, I'm doing all the offlines for Alan Rickman, Helena Bonham Carter,
really?
all these guys, and it's like, which is slightly unnerving, I have to say.
Yeah, right. So when you say offline, so you're off camera.
So I'm off camera,
but queuing in Daniel.
So I'm running the whole speech.
Yeah, right.
In the voice.
Right.
So I'm saying to Alan Rickman, where will they take him, the boy? And then he does his thing. So obviously the camera's on him, not on me. But he needs something to work off. So if I'm crap, he's got nothing to work off. So it's like it's proper pressure.
Yeah, to get that right.
You want to get it as right as you possibly can.
And also, what I didn't realise is that because some of the camera shots are from behind Lord Voldemort, so there's shots of the back your head.
There's loads of me in the film.
And not only Ralph or Rafe, not even is it Rafe. But there's some of yours, so it's like how does that feel when you watch that back?
Well, it's just a bit weird. I mean, I am Voldemort's back of head, hands, feet, swish of robe from a long way away. All these kinds of. I think I've even been. His face was put onto my body as well. Scene at King's Cross.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
A couple of times that happened. And I did some of the shots for the posters, so it's actually my body.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there we go.
So I have a famous foot. It was me who stood on Cedric Diggory's head in the graveyard. It was my finger that touched Harry on his scar for the first time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I'm particularly proud of that shot.
Yeah.
Because it had to be at the exact right angle. I had to know what each other finger was doing apart from the first finger.
Yeah.
And this is, I mean, the art of doubling is that you have to know what your actor's done. Now, Rafe did probably 5 or 7 takes of every single thing, from kind of slightly creepy uncle through to raging, nutter.
Yeah.
And then when I came to do the drop-in shot with B camera 6 weeks later, that's like nobody was actually there on the day he did that, and they say, "Oh, can you do what he did?" And I go, "Well, which take do you want?" Because they're all different.
Because there's so many different ones.
So it's really quite technical, and
it's quite an intense process. Because I think when I was speaking to you when you were doing it, because you were on set for how many hours a day are you doing?
Well, the long days. I mean 10, 12, 14-hour days.
It's a long time.
I mean, I kind of remember lots at 4:30, 5 in the morning, get shaved in my digs, go in, and you're in the chair at 6 or whatever, getting the makeup done.
And which films? Now you've done the 4th, the 5th. Go for
Goblet of Fire, Order of the Phoenix. Missed the next one because he wasn't really in it other than the flashback, and then Deathly Hallows 1 and 2.
Right. Okay.
And that's when I was down 6 months for those two, because
Yeah.
they shot them back to back. It was like crazy number of
Really?
shooting days. Yeah,
Yeah,
400 and something.
Whoa.
So that's when I was obviously it was all filmed at Leavesden, where the studio tour thing is now.
That's where it's now.
Where I have my wand box.
Oh, really?
Yeah, all the cast and crew have a wand box.
And what's a
with
wand
their
box?
name on.
Go through that.
It's a box with a wand in, Jeff.
But just with cast and crew, because
Yeah.
you get a book as well, didn't you?
I did get a book, yeah.
Which is this lovely printed
Production manual.
and just shows you shots of the
Proving
sets,
that I was in it.
proving you were in it.
Yeah.
And the one box is. Have you shown me that?
No, I haven't got it. It's at the visitor experience.
Oh, right.
In the wand shop at the end.
Right.
All the cast and crew have their names on the wand boxes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay. Right.
So if anyone's going, they can
Oh,
look
right.
for
So it's
my
there.
name.
And which was your favourite film to do?
Well,
the experience.
It's Goblet of Fire. I think is still my favourite because it was the first one, and it was just great. Mike Newell was the director, and he was lovely. I mean,
Mike. Now there's a. He's
well,
a
I know.
huge,
I know.
Who's the director? I
Yeah.
didn't realise he.
And so the two loveliest guys on set, Mike Newell and Daniel Radcliffe, and that's who I was basically
Wow.
working with, because it's just that one scene in the graveyard. And of course, I was new to it all, and it was just a fabulous. And all the rest of the doubles were really great. We had a ball on that, and that's the thing where there's a moment, because I remember Mike saying he'd never spoke. J.K. Rowling doesn't come anywhere near it, and
Oh, really?
and he'd spoken to her on the phone once for 30 minutes, and I think he said 25 minutes of that conversation was talking about this single moment, which is when Harry kind of has disappeared off behind a gravestone, and he has to make the decision to come out and fight, and it's kind of his from a boy to a man moment.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And obviously, Mike wanted me to do the offline, which was, and he just kept having me repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. So I'm going, "Don't you turn your back on me, Harry Potter! I want you to look at me when I kill you. I want to see the light leave your eyes."
Oh, that's.
Well, thank you very much. And I was doing that like on continuous.
And how were you?
I had to do like 6 or 7 of those.
What was he saying?
And
Did
then, and it was
darker?
like, and he was just like again, and obviously he was just looking for the performance from Dan.
Yeah.
But it was silent everywhere. You could hear a pin drop, like, because nobody knew whether it was Rafe or whether it was me. I have to say. And then at the end, we just all collapsed into fits of laughter. It was fantastic.
Was there applause as well?
Well, I got a handshake from Mike Newell.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So that was an absolute favourite memory. But I mean, Deathly Hallows was just amazing as well. I mean, because I got to blow up bits of the castle.
Did you?
Yeah. The courtyard scene at the end, and it's like, and that's a scary moment because the art department is saying it'll take a week to reset this. If you get this wrong.
So this is pyrotechnics. So just to explain to people so this is a particular scene of set, and things will blow up.
Yeah, so it's the cloisters, so things will blow up. There's cannons shooting debris out. There's fire bombs going off, and flash effects. There's actual flame. As Harry's running through and Voldy's firing shots at him.
Right.
It's just after he's leapt out of Hagrid's hands in the courtyard.
Right.
But it's me that's firing the shots, so all the pyrotechnics are going off on my cue.
Oh, wonderful!
But obviously, I've been given the timing of it. That's what they want. It needs to happen. This, and this.
So how often?
I've got to stunt Harry doing the run.
Right.
And I've got to fire the shots.
Point. Otherwise, it takes a week to reset.
And it's basically, so there's 300 extras on the set. It's costing God knows how much per minute to turn over. It's going to take him a week to reset the thing. And you just go, no pressure whatsoever. And it's just one of those surreal moments. And I remember thinking, well, just relax. It's like, what else can you do? Just because the more tense you are, the more likely you are to stuff it up. And it was just like,
so you'd rehearsed obviously the stunt Harry coming
rehearsed
through,
it.
and you worked out would he shout now? Would he? That would how you'd know the explosion.
Well, kind of. But
and what was that like when you did do it? And then
it's like
up? Obviously it's a pyrotechnic. But
but I mean it's quite exciting even so. I mean you just think that I've just done that. I just did that. But obviously, at the back of your mind, you're in this sort of surreal situation where you're thinking, I hope I hit the cue.
Yeah.
But also, you're acting, and also you're thinking, this is really cool. I've just fired a spell at Hogwarts and blown half of it up.
Wow. I didn't know that's a lot of pressure.
It is a lot of pressure. And I don't, to be honest, it's one of those when you think, I don't know how I got through that without having a little bit of a meltdown, because it is just an enormous amount of pressure.
Yeah.
But thankfully,
you got it.
Thankfully, we nailed it. There was one where it was a similar thing, and they were blowing up some of the banisters in when we were running up and down the banisters towards the end, and it was basically as soon as the camera was on a crane or a jib or whatever they're called, it was coming over my shoulder past me, and then there was going to be a shot, and they were taking the cue sort of from me, and they were going to cue me in, but I couldn't hear. I didn't hear the cue.
Oh, really?
It was really noisy, and I can't remember why it was really noisy, but there was something going off, and maybe the wind effects or something, and I missed the cue.
Right.
I just didn't hear a thing,
Right.
and thankfully the first AD just stopped it as soon as it got past my shoulder, and he realised I'd missed it. He just like stop,
really?
stop.
So you could have been
and it was like,
clattered by-
oh my god, yeah. So I said, can you just give me I need a visual clue because I can't hear a thing.
Is that partly because of the makeup is obscuring you?
No, not so much. I can't remember what the
It just
interference
noise,
was, but there was a lot of noise at that moment, and I just
so
didn't hear it. So it was like, oh crikey, that was close. That was close.
And then what was it like at the rap party? And people don't listen. Rap parties are the big party at the end of a film being made where everybody gets together.
Yeah, well, I didn't get invited to that.
Did you not get invited?
No.
Right.
What happened was I got to the screenings, the premieres.
Yeah.
So you get your red carpet moment.
Right.
So, which is also obviously quite surreal, and you're going past all these crowds of people who are going, well, who are you?
Yeah. Just, how dare they?
I mean, although when all the doubles walk together, it's kind of, you think, well, you're kind of vaguely familiar, but, I can't quite place it. But I mean, obviously nobody knew who I was because I had a nose. It just doesn't work, does it? So that's getting into the theatre. So obviously it's really exciting being in the screening. But
who was there? What were the stars that came out?
Well, they're all quite a few of them are there. Cast are there. All the trio of kids.
Yes.
Dan, Emma, and Rupert, but the producers and the directors, they all give a speech at the end and everything. It was fabulous, really great experience. But then the after party is somewhere else, and the likes of us just didn't get in.
Yeah.
They only had 2,000 people at the rap party.
It
didn't get down to the doubles.
Yeah. So keeping it on a small scale.
I think, crikey. I'm in that film. There's parts of me that glue that film together, and it's like you can't even.
Pivotal.
I know, absolutely.
Pivotal. So
no, it
it's
is.
like, and listen, there's probably a whole other special here on just more stories from when you played in the Harry Potter films. But I want to chat to you briefly as well, or not briefly, just go back to when we first met, because before you did all of this. You were a comedy poet.
I was a comedy poet.
And because I had started comedy and you were starting comedy.
Well, it was we met. We both did our first ever gig.
Yes, it
together,
was,
didn't
it was
we?
At the
We
Turtle
lost
Purple,
our comedy virginity together.
And I still have, and I've got it here for people. and I know you don't like this, but it's Ian. So Ian was one of very few comedy poets. Is it Ivor Dembina?
Yeah, there was one.
He did comedy poetry. And there was...
I can't... Oh, Dan Antopolsky did a bit, didn't he?
So everybody did a bit, but you were like full on... Your set was packed with... Well, there was one-liners, puns, but it was a lot of poetry.
Quite a bit.
And so now we did a launch for this in about 1999 at the Hen and Chickens in Islington. So people in London... So in North London, there's a sort of art housey theatre where a lot of comedy at the time would... be put on, and I remember seeing Noel Fielding walking out the tube station. Islington, Highbury and Islington, because the Boosh were based around there. So and then Ian launched a little book, which is, and there it is. It's still
signed,
because we did sketches that day as well. And I played Jesus Christ.
You did, and you've been stuck in that role ever since.
I've been stuck in that role. So and there's lots of poems. Unfortunately, this is out of print now. As always, badger you and urge you to do some more and get it. So there's some wonderful poems. I might just get you to read out one of my favourites, either Carshags or Faraslack's Wearer, because I'm sorry. Cool. I love them. I think they're brilliant poems.
Fantastic. Well, shall we finish with that?
We'll just to sort of... So we met so you were doing the comedy poetry. Now you were working at Jongleurs,
Yeah.
which is again the massive chain of stand-up comedy clubs, and that's how you fell into doing the comedy, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I did a bit of poetry up in Manchester when I first started, and then when I moved to London, I was doing poetry in London, but it was all a bit kind of it was too chin-strokey for me.
Yeah.
And like at the Poetry Cafe at in Betterton Square,
Yeah.
and all very kind of worthy and stuff. And I'm a northern bloke doing comedy, as not all comedy, I have to say, but at least half of it's comedy.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, it's not really my scene. And then I got a job part-time at Jongleurs, which just blew my mind because, like, suddenly I'm going, oh my word, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
And of course, when you're exposed to it every weekend, you kind of really get to know how it works and because, like, I didn't realise people do the same set all the time.
Yeah, right.
I thought it was different.
Yeah.
And it was like, I could do this.
You could.
All you need is one set.
I did one open spot and I thought, that's it, done it. Now I've got to come up with another fresh 5-7 minutes.
Yeah.
It's horrendous. And then you
crazy.
realise, oh, hang on a minute.
Yeah, I know. And obviously it gets you into the swing of gag writing, which is something that I'd never really done before. And there's just a way that a joke works, and it's to the syllable, isn't it? I mean, a line is either funny or not funny because of a syllable. It's the most precise writing I think you can ever do. It's the best way to learn about editing and getting to the point.
Yeah.
About disguising the lead up. I mean, there's so many kind of little rules that you don't really realise.
And what got you on stage? Because I think, was there a competition running?
Yeah, there was.
And you
there
were
was,
like,
there was a new act
go
night, and a new act competition that they were running, and the first heat happened, and I was working that night, and I thought I could do that.
Yeah,
I could do that. So I said, "Can I do the next one?" And they went, "Well, yeah." So if you want, so I had to obviously I had to come up with 5 minutes of stuff. So did you come to the flat?
I remember your flat.
So basically, so I just kind of did a bit of a puke onto paper of all the kind of gags I could think of. And then I invited a few mates round and just reeled them off, didn't I?
But I love your just do the gag about the love triangle.
Yeah. So it was I've been involved in a love triangle recently with a girl called Isosceles. And
she flew off in a...
No, wait for it.
Sorry.
She said, "Ian, if you really love me, give me a sign." But I got mixed up, gave her a cosign, and she flew off at a tangent.
Brilliant. I love that one. And that was actually, you got on this morning.
Oh, I did, didn't I? Yeah.
And that was a little game looking for comedians. You had to tell 3 jokes in a space
of
a minute.
It was a 40 minutes. 40 seconds. They wanted 40 seconds of clean comedy.
Right.
And
can you remember those?
Well, it was.
There was that one, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was. Ladies and gentlemen, don't you just love organisations with inappropriately worded answering machines? This is the drug rehabilitation. What was it? Drug rehabilitation helpline. For information on cannabis, press #.
Beautiful, lovely.
So I did that one.
You did that one
on Richard and Judy.
That was Richard and Judy.
Drug reference. Shock horror.
Yeah.
But I had to audition for it. The producer rang me up and said, "Can you do your 40 seconds?" And I was actually on stage at the Hen and Chickens doing the recce.
Right.
So I was I just went straight into it because I was actually, I wasn't in Sainsbury's or I was on stage, so it was really good. And it was Adrian Rocks that. Do you remember who used to run the club in Richmond?
Yeah, so that was a comedy promoter who ran
bless him.
clubs
So he ran a few clubs, didn't he?
Yeah.
And so they rang him saying, "Have you got any clean comics?" Because we're struggling because it's daytime. So I was on against. There was, what was the other guy? There was a guy off a cruise ship.
Right. Okay.
Called Bobby Dazzler.
Right.
I can't remember the third guy.
Remember. But then you went on. But then you were motoring.
But I won. Just like I won that. Obviously.
You won the night.
I won the Richard and Judy new act.
Oh, you won it. You won it. And what did
new
you
act
get
of the
for
year.
That again?
I got a 10-minute slot at the Comedy Store.
Ah, right. And how did that go?
Interestingly.
Right.
I mean, that was my first real kind of experience of, because it was a Saturday night and it was like, whoa. So it's like I've never really been heckled before. I'd not really properly been heckled before. So it was like, oh my goodness, this is.
It's a bear pit, isn't
it?
Who were you on with? Can you remember?
Oh, I can't remember now. Simon Bligh was comparing. I remember that. Yeah, maybe Simon.
But it was
Clayton.
a bit of a. it was so after that experience, you were like, again.
Well, it was a bit weird because because I'd kind of put some new material in. I remember Don Ward saying, "Well, what was that bit?" Yeah. And it was like, well, it was a routine.
Yeah.
And it was about playing poker, like allying a relationship with playing poker.
Yeah.
And upping the stakes all the time until you get to a weekend at Centre Parks with a child from the previous relationship. And he was like, "What was that?" And it was like, "Well, it was me doing a piece of material." And it was like, "Well, I'll give you another slot." And it was like, it was really condescending.
Yeah. Oh,
wasn't
is.
he?
He's terrible.
Yeah.
I think he was a former. I don't know. He sold insurance or something like that.
Yeah.
He'd spotted it in LA, and then I think he had that vision to put something on in London, but I don't think he had comedy vision. But anyway.
No, and I don't think he was into comedy poetry either. Just as he's not into character comedy, is he? It's like it's a very narrow.
He's very pure stand-up only. But,
yeah. So I did another. Anyway, I did do a second one there as well.
But then you kept going, and you went from strength to strength, and you got up to a 20-minute set.
Yeah, well, I got a booking from Avalon for their. They had a student circuit, didn't they?
Avalon's a big comedy agency, isn't it?
Yeah, and they were doing TV shows at the time, and they ran a student network.
That's it.
So I got the gig.
You did a few of those. Didn't you?
No, I only did one actually. I did the Exeter one with Lee Mack. I was supporting Lee Mack.
That's it. Yeah, you remember. So
so that was my first.
But you
20 minutes.
You went on to still. You carried on doing the comedy poetry anyway, in bits and parts and stuff like that. And
well, my 20-minute set had quite a bit of poetry in it. I mean, to be honest, I don't know how I got away with it because.
Well, it was funny.
Well, it was funny.
It was
Thank
funny.
you. Yeah.
So it's like, and then looking at your book, there's the penis is mightier than the sword. That's one of your.
Well, it was one of mine, but then somebody else used it.
Did they?
Yeah.
Who? Someone.
Matt Welcome used it.
Really?
Yeah. Not in the same way, but the same gag.
Yeah. But then you do get quite a lot of crossovers sometimes. And then actually, advice from a men's magazine. Yeah. That's a very short poem. So should we go out on Carl Shagg's?
It's up to you, Jeff. Which is your favourite?
I love advice from a men's magazine, and can we go to Carl Shagg's?
Right.
And so I'll just say, Ian Longstaff. I went in the poet there, but that's how I knew. Ian Longstaff, thank you very much for coming on the podcast today.
Yes, you're very welcome.
And Lord Voldemort.
Yes. And not a problem.
And I will give.
You are enlisted to the Dark Army now, of course.
Of course, thank you very much.
It's far more fun.
Far more fun. And I will give. More
I have to get my reading glasses. Just
go get your reading glasses. And was to say as well, I think we've mentioned it. We're coming from the Funny Peculiar podcast hub, or as it's known, my flat.
Yeah.
So
it's very exciting to be at the nerve centre, Mission Control.
Now you see where it all goes on. So, and I'll give lots of information about it, and you can find Ian online, and you can find out his story. And so there we go. So these are Ian's. This is from when he produced his Ian the Poet. It's Comedy Rocks. Was the name of the little book, wasn't it, that you brought out?
That's Poetry Rocks.
Poetry Rocks. Sorry. And of course, and so take away Ian Longstaff, and this. You go for it.
Advice from a men's magazine. Pubic pruning equals an extra inch, they enthused, so with scissors I did run amok, but the gardener inside me insisted instead on a bush in the shape of a peacock.
Wonderful, I love that one. But this is my top.
And bizarrely, I am actually doing gardening.
You
now.
are doing gardening,
not in that kind of style.
Yeah. There's and this is my very very favourite one of Ian's.
Well, Carl Shags. This I used to close on this, didn't I?
You did.
Yeah.
You did.
So yes, Car Shags. The most comfortable, Kate, in a Volvo estate. I found them both to be well built and roomy. The worst performance, Yvette, in that Citroën BX. It was the hydraulic suspension that threw me. The most daring, lashing into Louise, atop a speeding Mercedes as she signalled left and right with her feet. The most expensive, mauling Mavis in a rented car from Avis when they charged me for the rip in the seat. The most disappointing, peroxide blonde Joyce in Daddy's Rolls Royce, a silver lady who turned out to be chrome. The most exhausting, ramming Rhoda in a rusty old Skoda when I had to push the bastard thing home. The best deal, 3 years free servicing from Sue. That was in a Daewoo. She made the other girl's promises sound hollow, but the best blowjob, Fee, as I drove a 2CV and a bump in the road made her swallow. But the top shag by far was on 3 wheels, not 4. in a Reliant Robin with a waitress called Keely. 'Cause when we ate full pelt, it made the fiberglass melt, and when we climaxed, we pulled off a wheelie.
There
you go,
fantastic.
just for you, Jeff.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you for doing that, Ian. Thanks for coming on. Oh,
welcome.
one last question I almost forgot, as I ask all my guests. Final question. Who do you think I should have on a future episode of the show?
Oh, wow. Good question. Well, we mentioned her earlier, the Bellatrix body double, Claire. She was a background artist for like 17 years.
Wow,
yeah,
okay.
And she's got some great stories, so I
Brilliant.
think she'd be a good person.
She'd be perfect. Brilliant. A massive thank you again to Ian for coming on the show today. And and keep a lookout for more great guests coming. So thank you for keeping it funny peculiar.
You've been listening to Funny Peculiar. Tune in next week. More great guests.